Shu Qingxuan continued seriously. I want to try and see if I can take care of that thing myself. Your Highness has more experience, so are you free? If not, don't force yourself. Shu Qingxuan had helped Xie Lian out many times in the past. Now that he had an emergency and came to Xie Lian for assistance, there was no way he could decline and say that he had the heart but not the power. However, Hua Cheng came from far away as a guest and hadn't even stayed for more than a few days. If Xie Lian left, who was going to host him? Although it wasn't like he was a very good host himself. Just as he was considering his options, Hua Cheng supported his chin with one hand, smiled, and said, "Is Ge going to try and catch a glimpse of that reverend of empty words? If it wouldn't be a bother, will you bring me along? It's a rare monster, after all. I've never seen it myself, either." Xie Lian thought to himself, "Much ashamed, but Sun Lang understands me." Filled with gratitude for his consideration, Xie Lian nodded. Shu Qingxuan didn't say anything on the subject. Of course he knew that Hua Cheng coming along wasn't to help him, but at least he also wouldn't be messing with him. So whether Hua Cheng came meant nothing to him. Xie Lian then said, "That reverend of empty words is a mysterious creature. Who knows when or where it would appear again?" Shu Qingxuan replied, "I don't know either. If anything, I plan on going to the imperial capital and reserving the best room at the best restaurant to drink for 80 or 100 days and put on plays and set off firecrackers every day. It'll come out eventually." "That's one way to do it," Xie Lian said. "However, even if it comes out, we might not be able to capture it. The best way to win a battle is to know oneself and the enemy inside and out. Has Lord Windmaster investigated what its prey has been in the past? How does it operate? See if there's any pattern." "Of course, my brother had already investigated this," Shu Qingxuan said. He took out a scroll from his sleeve, spreading it open. Xie Lian scooted closer to take a look, and was in awe in spite of himself. "Amazing," he said. "Amazing. What a guy. That creature really only fished for the big ones." The series of names on that scroll were pretty much all big names in the mortal realm, each of them a character of notoriety, almost all of them having tragic ends. Each one of those tragic ends was suicides after breakdowns. There were those who slit their own throats after their armies were ruined like fallen mountains. Those who cleanly offed themselves with a 3-meter-long white bandage after their amassed fortune disappeared overnight. And those who sunk into the depths of despair after having spent their entire lifetime seeking influence and affluence, but achieving nothing. They weren't necessarily defeated by the hand of the Reverend of Empty Words. They were defeated by the fear of loss in their own hearts. However, there weren't any emperors or kings on that list. As Heaven's sons, true kings had a protective aura, and evil could not easily invade. Generally speaking, those who had the potential to ascend would also have a natural spiritual shield covering their bodies that would force demons and monsters to stand down. So Xie Lian felt that whatever it was that attached itself to Shu Qingxuan wasn't something so simple. Perhaps there was someone behind the scenes, purposely coming for him. If that was the case, whoever it was must be quite formidable. However, Shu Qingxuan was marked when he was but a baby. How did he attract such a character? Just then, Hua Cheng spoke up. "Ge, May I have a look? Shilian passed the scroll over to him. Here, he said. Hua Chang swept a passing look over it, then asked, who put the scroll together? My brother. What? Shi Qingshuan replied. Hua Chang tossed the scroll back on the table and said, nothing, just that it's crap and full of mistakes. I suggest your brother try again. Hearing him, Shi Qingshuan was going to throw a fit. Crimson Rain, Sword Flower, he shouted. Shilian immediately held him down and said apologetically, Lord Windmaster, please sit down. Sit down. Let it go. San Lang always talks like this. He doesn't mean it. Shi Qingshuan sat down, sounding doubtful. He always talks like this? Shilian turned to Hua Chang and asked, San Lang, he said it's full of mistakes. How so? Hua Chang shuffled over, and the two sat much closer than before. Hua Chang pointed out a few names and said, these ones are wrong. Shilian looked at the names closely. They were all vengeful, malevolent tyrants. How do you know? He asked. Because I killed them, Hua Chang replied. Doesn't this say they all died by suicide? Shilian asked. Before I would make my move, I'd send messengers to greet them first, and they'd end themselves, Hua Chang replied. So perhaps that doesn't count as my kill? Who knew whether that counted as his kill, but at least he was honest. Shi Qingshuan coughed a few times uncomfortably, his lips twitching. He said, Can ghosts please not so plainly describe how they kill people in front of heavenly officials? Can ghosts please not discuss these types of questions openly with other heavenly officials in front of other heavenly officials? Hua Chang pointed at another few names and said, These ones are also wrong. And who killed these? Shilian asked. Blackwater killed them, Hua Chang said. Shilian was taken aback. Blackwater, Demon Xuan? Doesn't he always lie low? That doesn't mean he doesn't kill, Hua Chang said. Then he turned to Shi Qingshuan. Your esteemed brother gave you a scroll that's inaccurate and full of mistakes. There's no heart in this investigation at all, and it looks like a suspicious red herring, nothing but a bunch of rags. So I suggest that you rip this up and rewrite another one. Shi Qingshuan grabbed the scroll back and exclaimed, My brother isn't like that. Although his words were weak, his tone was firm. Shi Wudu wouldn't be so careless when it came to his own younger brother, so there could only be one possibility. Shilian asked, Every profession has its own niche. Lord Watermaster would have borrowed another's expertise in his investigation. May I ask who was the one who actually put the scroll together? After some hesitation, Shi Qingshuan replied, Ling Wen. Shilian rubbed his forehead and stopped speaking. Although the other heavenly officials all cursed the palace of Ling Wen for its inefficiency, it still shouldn't have made so many mistakes. It almost looked like this was nothing more than a rough draft. The tumors looked like they shared a good relationship, at least on the surface. What was underneath, outsiders would probably never know. Hua Chang shuffled back and continued. Let me tell you another way to tell the difference between what's true and what's fake. Once the reverend of empty words sets sight on its prey, it'll pull the weed out by the roots. Not only will its prey suffer breakdowns and die, the families and friends of said prey will all be affected. So those who only died by themselves on the scroll, whose friends and families are alive and well, those names are all wrong too. Hearing this, Shi Qingshuan's face paled by another shade. Soon after, he regained his cheer and laughed weakly at Ming Yi. Ming Xiong, doesn't that mean you're in danger too? You're my best friend, after all. Ming Yi shifted to sit further away from him his entire face written with the sentiment, "Can I not have you as a best friend, please?" This move brought him closer to Shilian, and Hua Chang's eyes swept over him, sharp as knives. Seeing that Shi Qingxuan still hadn't forgotten to joke around, even in times like these, Shilian couldn't help but smile. Nevertheless, he could faintly tell that Shi Qingxuan was anxious, or rather, it was because he was anxious that he had to use extra cheer to push it down. Shi Qingxuan flashed his Windmaster fan and fanned 5 or 6 times faster than usual, his black hair flying wildly in the wind. "Then let's go right now," he said, "to the fanciest, tallest tower to drink ourselves into oblivion. I gotta see for myself if it'd dare come out with so many of us around. We've got the numbers," he laughed. "Lord Windmaster, please calm down," Shilian said. "Wait for me for a moment. I've still got some little things to take care of in the shrine." Who knew how many days this trip would take? With 2 children, 2 mouths, plus a god-forsaken ghost possessing a man, he couldn't just leave them be. He thought about finding someone reliable in the village to help watch over them. But it seemed that Hua Chang knew his worries and spoke up. "If Gerger must go, then go without a worry. I've got hands. While you're gone, there'll naturally be people to watch over the shrine." Shilian let out a breath of relief. "Thank goodness for San Lang," he said. "It'd be better if there's someone here to watch over things." Their watch over obviously meant different things. However, no one pried into it. Ming Yi moved the altar table away and started drawing the distance-shortening array on the ground. Shi Qingxuan's fan was fanning so rapidly, its form could no longer be seen. "By the way, Your Highness, I forgot to ask earlier. Just who is it outside the door? How did I piss him off to have such rude words come out of his mouth?" Shi Qingxuan asked. To be asked about only at the end and in such an offhand manner, if Qirong heard, he'd no doubt suffer heartburn again. It really was rude, Shilian thought, as he packed up Roya and Feng Xin leaning against the corner. "Didn't he already announce his own title?" Shilian said. "What, that really was the green ghost?" Shi Qingxuan was surprised. "That face with that attitude? You really got to see things for yourself, indeed." Shilian rubbed his forehead and briefly gave an account of things, reminding Shi Qingxuan to keep it a secret, especially from Lang Chenchou. During their exchange, Ming Yi finished drawing the distance-shortening array. The one that Nan Feng drew the last time was crude and rough, and it took him a long time. Ming Yi's was the complete opposite. His hands were swift and precise, completing the drawing with but one line. The circle he drew was cleaner and more accurate than if one were to use a ruler. The characters were also neat and orderly, as if they were pressed prints. Shilian couldn't help but secretly gape in awe. With the array finished, Ming Yi said, "Let's go." Shi Qingxuan sucked in a breath and blew gently, extinguishing the candlelight. Hua Chang took the lead and was the first to push open the door. The little door creaked open, and it was pitch black outside. As if the door was connected to an old house that had been abandoned for many years, the air was thick with mold and dust. Following behind Hua Chang was Shilian, who softly thanked Hua Chang as he crossed through for taking the initiative to open the door. Then came Shi Qingxuan, and the last one was Ming Yi. Once he crossed over, he closed the door behind him. The moment the door was shut, within the darkness came a voice from behind the door, gloomy and chilling. "The place you wish to go will become the nightmare you wish never to remember." The instant Shilian heard the voice, his foot kicked out. The door instantly collapsed from his kick, but once the array was used, it would lose its effect. Behind the door was no longer Fuchi Shrine, but rather a pile of trash. That intense action roused thick clouds of dust. Shilian coughed, a little glad that he didn't break the door Huachang had made. He said, with his sleeve covering his face, "Was that the reverend of empty words?" Shi Qingshuan was gripping his whisk and his wind master fan tightly, and replied, "That's his voice. Has it been following me?" Shilian waved away the dust in the air and said, "No. There were 3 heavenly officials and 1 ghost king earlier. If something was following you, how would we not know? Clearly, it had only just come." Ming Yi also said, "Calm down." Shi Qingshuan exclaimed, "I'm calm. I'm very calm. I've been calming." Huachang, however, stood ahead and said leisurely, "Calm is good, but there's definitely something going on. Does anyone know where we are?" Shilian looked around and also wondered. Weren't we going to the nicest restaurant in the imperial capital? No matter how he looked, this old abandoned house looked nothing like that restaurant Shi Qingshuan spoke of. The 4 of them explored around and found the entrance, but it was locked by giant locks. Shilian kicked again and the locks broke, opening the doors. Once the doors opened, what appeared before them were neither hellish fires nor mysterious landscapes of evil. It was a perfectly normal, indistinct little town. Huachang raised his brows. "The imperial capital shouldn't look like this," he said. Shilian agreed wholeheartedly. The aura of an imperial capital could not be compared to such a small town, and he turned around and asked, "Lord Earthmaster, did you make a mistake in your array?" Ming Yi said, however, "I didn't make any mistakes. The original destination wasn't here." Shilian immediately understood. This meant that the creature had meddled. It had sent them to this place.